was pitch black. My hands were tied down. I had a breathing tube still in my throat, which I was told wasn't going to be there. And there was kind of like a strobe light, and there were a bunch of nurses yelling that I was awake because they wanted to get the breathing tube out right away as soon as I woke up. So I woke up and it was like your worst nightmare. My name's Rob. I'm from Delaware County, PA. I'm 21, and I was diagnosed with stage 3C testicular cancer back in March of 2024. Once I got to college, I got really active and into fitness. So a big part of my day was kind of going to the gym. My symptoms, they started back in February. And it just coincidentally, it happened the day I was at the gym and I was squatting, I was going for a max squat. And about an hour after I'd left the gym, my back started hurting really bad. And so I was assuming it was kind of, weightlifting related, kind of just like an injury on my back. I went about 2 weeks with back pain, and throughout those 2 weeks, it started getting, progressively worse. And so I decided to go to urgent care up at school, and they had just prescribed me just some pain med to try and get through. This is now 3 weeks since the back pain had started. I was also kind of losing my appetite during this time, and I was kind of thinking, it's because my back's hurting. I haven't been going to the gym. I haven't been kind of, using any of my energy. I was thinking I just wasn't as hungry. And then the 4th week, I had gone to the urgent care again, so it was the 2nd week in a row, and they just prescribed me another pain med to see if it would work. And I had to go later in the day because I was working, and it happened to be right before they closed, and they kind of. I guess they honestly refused to do blood tests, even though I kind of had asked if they could, and they kind of brushed it off to the side because it was getting late and they all wanted to get out of there. So I would have had to show up again, and that was on a Saturday. So I got home from there, and that next morning, Sunday morning, I'd woken up and it was really early in the morning, and I was throwing up blood and like bile. So I knew something was up, and that's when I, called my mom, and she was like, "Just head to the ER right away. 'Cause there's something else, going on besides just the back pain." They were taking a bunch of blood to go do tests, and then I had gone back to do a CAT scan and an X-ray right after that. And about an hour after that, one of the doctors had walked in, and he started asking me questions about if I had ever noticed anything kind of funky going on with my testicles. And I was like, I guess so. Yeah. For like probably a good couple years, one of them has been more firm than the other one, but I never assumed it was really an issue because, I'd gone for my regular yearly checkups back in, up until I was 18, and they had never said anything about it. But I'm probably about 5 years, my right one was always kind of more firm, but I just never assumed it was really an issue just because it was getting checked by a doctor. So if they're not saying anything's wrong, I'm not going to question it. And after that, he had showed me my X-ray of my chest, and he was like, all of these, white cloudy spots, they're not supposed to be there. And there's a high percentage chance that it's cancerous. I had my mom come up to my school, packed up my stuff, and headed home and started receiving treatment as quickly as possible. I think it was within a couple of days I was getting chemo. It might sound weird, but I didn't really feel anything at all. Like I kind of was just taking it all in because, you hear the word cancer and it's very scary, because you're thinking the first thought you kind of have is about like, am I going to die? Kind of like, it's just the first death is what comes to your head right away when you hear cancer. For me at least. So I guess that was a worry for me right away, but also my doctor kind of had more of like a nurturing vibe to him. So I wasn't really as worried as maybe some other people would be. But it did kind of come out of left field. And I'd say I was kind of stunned or shocked. So I didn't really have much of a reaction. I was just trying to take it all in. And I feel like as time progressed and as I started getting treatment and everything, that's when it kind of all started to hit. And, you have your periods of, sadness, and other times where you're in a good mood and you're like, I'm going to get through this. But yeah, it's kind of like a roller coaster. But at first, yeah, I mean, I didn't really have too much emotion towards it. I was just trying to take it all in and tell the people that I was closest with what was going on. and just try to take it day by day and see what's, because I didn't know anything at the time, what was, my plan for treatment or anything. So I didn't know my stage or anything. My parents, like my immediate family, it definitely hit them the hardest. And I felt horrible, especially for my mom. She was, worried sick, especially because she was the one that I told first, because she had to come up and get me. And there was a period of time where she felt really bad because with my diagnosis, my oncologist had mentioned that there is an embryonic component to it and it comes from the mother. And then my roommates, it's funny because I hadn't talked to them about any of this up until I had actually gone up to visit them a couple months ago up at Penn State. And they had told me the entire, story of what happened that day that I had texted one of my roommates when I was at the hospital, what was going on. And, saying, hey, I'm going to stop by. I'm grabbing all my stuff, but I'm heading out because of, what's going on. And they said that they, like, our apartment when we all lived together, there was really never like a moment of silence in there. It was always loud and something going on. And they said the entire day there was absolutely no talking. It was just completely silent in there, and they just didn't know how to feel because they were just as worried as me, just seeing it from another view. My girlfriend at the time, we were together for over 2 years at the time of my diagnosis, and I know it definitely hit her hard too. I could kind of just tell by the way she was around me, the way she acted, and her facial expressions that it was, really tolling on her as well. First course of action was my diagnosis was a lot further along. So I had stage 3C, which is the furthest along stage. So I was not able to get any surgeries or anything first. I had to go the chemo route first. So I had opted for 4 rounds of VIP chemo, 5 days in, and then 21 days at home. And then I'd go back in for 5 days and get chemo each of those 5 days and then off. I knew what chemotherapy was prior to getting diagnosed, but I had no idea what chemo looked like, how you receive it. I didn't know anything at all. So um, I had a PICC line in my arm that I had placed in to receive my chemo, which honestly, it kind of stunk because, in between chemos, I would feel good enough. Like I've always been pretty big into working out, but I couldn't lift anything heavy because of the PICC line in my arm. So it kind of stunk that the time in between, I couldn't do anything really that active. The first round wasn't too bad. I'd say more towards on my first round, the fourth and fifth day, it definitely started to get a little rough. My second and third rounds were, I guess, somewhat okay. And then I guess I would say it progressively got worse each round, actually. Like, usually, like, a lot of stories I was hearing about people receiving chemo was it, almost like your body almost somewhat gets used to it and it gets easier and better. But for me, it was almost kind of like the opposite. Like, I would have like my days where I felt a little bit better than others, but it did continually get worse, and there was a lot of vomiting, like nausea, and it kind of stunk because it was very aggressive. It wasn't just normal vomiting; like it was hurting my stomach to throw up because of how violent it was, and I just didn't feel good at all. It makes you feel like crap. So um, I was grateful for the time in between each round where I was able to feel pretty normal. I did lose my hair, and I think that was probably one of the more challenging things for me. It was pretty rough because I didn't want to leave my house. I didn't want to be seen in public. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to stay in my house. I didn't want anyone to see me. Even like people were like, "Oh, you can just wear a hat." Like it didn't matter. I could cover my entire face and I wouldn't want to go out. I just felt off. I felt awkward and felt like everyone was going to be staring at me. So that was definitely a huge mental battle for me, I guess I'd say, because I pretty much would try and trap myself in my house. I didn't want, even the days I felt good, I didn't necessarily want to go anywhere. Or if I did, like my girlfriend at the time, she'd love to go to Starbucks and stuff. So I'd go with her in the morning, but I'd stay in the car. Like she would go in and I just wouldn't want to go out. So, things like that. I just never wanted to really be seen in public. It definitely does make a difference when it's not just your head, but it's your eyebrows and like my eyelashes. It's everything. So you just look sick. Like that's just what you look like. And I hated the fact that I looked that way, but there was nothing I could do about it. It was kind of disappointing, but I also just tried to make the best of it. I had my girlfriend. I had her shave my head once I started noticing it on my pillow at night. So I just had her completely shave my head and just you know rock the bald cut for a while. There's still thin spots. My hair is beforehand was really thick and curly. The sides and the back kind of are like that, but the top is still really thin. I think my last round was in July, so it's been a bit of time, but I mean, it can take a good bit of time for it to fully recover. I had surgery on August 2nd of 2024. My surgeon, he was looking at my scans and everything, and he was like, it was supposed to just be the orchiectomy. So what I was expecting from what my oncologist had told me was most likely um, my tumors had shrunk a lot from the 4 rounds of chemo. However, there were still quite a lot in there, and there were a couple tumors that were still pretty large. So he was saying, we're just going to monitor those for now. Most likely, the surgeon's going to tell you that he's going to do the orchiectomy, and then we're just going to monitor those tumors and see what happens in the future, and if you need the other surgery, which would be the RPL&D. It stands for retroperitoneal lymph node dissection. I wasn't expecting anything besides my surgeon at the consultation to say, we're going to schedule the orchiectomy. It's going to be a quick, hour-long surgery. You'll be out either that day or the next day. So I expect it to be something really simple. And when I got in there, which I mean, I love him, but he's very blunt and straight to the point. And he came in and sat down. He was like, look, I know what you were kind of expecting, but there's no way you get out of this RPL&D surgery. Like, I'm going to do that and I'm going to do this one at the same time. I think it's the best plan of action. So immediately I just kind of started bawling my eyes out, and because it just wasn't what I was expecting. He was kind of going over the entire procedure, how it's going to go. So they basically did an incision from kind of right where your rib cage kind of starts to separate, and then it goes all the way down around your belly button, and then about another cut like 2 inches below your belly button. And that when he was explaining this, it was freaking me out, and I was just so shocked. I wasn't expecting it at all. And I remember moving to another room, and I was crying, and my girlfriend and my mom were there. And I remember just saying, I was like, I just want this shit out of me. Like, I just want this over with. And yeah, scheduled it a couple weeks later, went in for it. And yeah, I would definitely say the surgery was 10 times worse than any of the chemo I had gone through. It was like living hell. Um, there were some complications with my surgery. I had like a lot of blood loss, so I needed a blood transfusion. I was expecting the surgery to be about 3.5 hours. I think it was almost 7. It was around noon. The last thing I remember was being told, you're going to probably wake up around like 4 to 5 p.m. You're going to be a quiet, nice room. Your family's going to be around you. And it was the complete opposite. It was pitch black. My hands were tied down. I had a breathing tube still in my throat, which I was told wasn't going to be there. There was kind of like a strobe light, and there were a bunch of nurses yelling that I was awake because they wanted to get the breathing tube out right away as soon as I woke up. So I woke up, and it was like, it was like your worst nightmare. So that's kind of the only super vivid memory I have of the hospital, just because it was the complete opposite of what the last thing I remember. It was the complete opposite. And it was also 5 a.m. So because of the way the surgery had gone. So it was the complete next day. And none of my family was allowed to stay over. So it was just me there on my own in the ICU. And I had no idea what was going on. I wasn't able to speak because I had the breathing tube in. I just remember trying to point at the clock, asking what time it was because I couldn't see it. And then, yeah, even after the surgery, the recovery was, I was supposed to be in the hospital for about 3 to 5 days. The stay was supposed to be. I think I was in there for 12 or 13. So it was very extended. I had some issues with eating, and I was having like really bad nausea for a long time after the surgery. I got an infection while I was in the hospital, so I ended up having to stay longer because of that. And it took a couple of days for them to realize what was kind of going on. So that took some more time. I had a catheter in, which was I I would never want to get one of those again. That was that was bad, and it stopped working at one point, so and it was still in. That's what I ended up getting the infection from, was from the catheter. Bad experience overall, but if I was able to see myself now in this moment and just knowing that all I have to do is go through that, I would do it over and over again, even though it was, probably the worst experience of my life. I try not to really stop and think about anything too much, because that's when it does kind of get bad, is if I stop and think about it too much. So I kind of just was, the best plan of action for me at least was just to take it day by day. My mom always was telling me not to get ahead of myself, because I was always worried about, what if the tumors, what if the pathology comes back from the tumors, and I end up needing another surgery on my lungs, because it was, it had gone all the way up into, there were even some spots in my brain that they were never able to clarify if they were metastases or if it was just clots. Um, so I was always worried about needing further surgery, and just kind of taking things day by day, and not getting ahead of yourself with anything, because if you start thinking, just it's just going to become, a ripple effect of terrible thoughts that just never end. So trying to just stay, in the present, and not worrying about anything in the future, and just taking on each day with what it comes with. So I would say that was a big part of getting through it. And also just like having a good support team. I had my family, my roommates, actually, they had gotten together, a lot of people, probably close to 100, all in this video. It was like a 10-minute video they sent me while I was getting my second round of chemo, all just wishing me good luck, and saying, wishing me well and stuff. So that was kind of able to boost my spirits a little bit. They did come and visit me. Just having like a good support system, knowing that there's people around you that love you and care about you and are there to help you through everything. My girlfriend at the time, she took really good care of me. There were times where I'd come home from chemo, and after the surgery especially, but I would be completely like incapable of getting a shower on my own. I could not do anything on my own. Like I couldn't stand up and get out of bed on my own at certain points. And just having her kind of spend each and every day here with me, just kind of commuting from work to back to my house, it was definitely really helpful with having her being able to kind of, do a lot for me at that time. Prayer kind of became a big thing for me. It was kind of a moment where, I was always kind of the person that kind of just shows up on Christmas and Easter for mass, and that's kind of it. But realizing that I can kind of pray, and realizing that all the anxieties and worries that I was dealing with my diagnosis, they kind of were all able to just kind of, fly away and just leave my body and my mind if I just prayed. So I started getting really into that. And that was also a very big thing for me, starting to, develop a closer relationship with God. That was definitely a big step for me in terms of helping my mentality during the entire thing. And it's something that I'll, continue to do the rest of my life, because I've realized how much it's helped me. It's definitely just as much mental as it is physical on the body. Like it is very even with both of those, and it's both just a lot. So for me physically, I think one of the hardest things was being almost 210 pounds, and then getting through my surgery and seeing 160 on the scale was very detrimental. Like I was really upset about it. And there were times where I'd look at like before and after pictures from, pre-diagnosis to after my surgery. I'm just like jaw drop, like, wow, like I can't believe that this is, what I look like now. Um, but I'm kind of, you know, in a weird way, I'm almost appreciative of what kind of happened, because it's definitely more of a humbling experience that I don't want to say I needed, but I mean, I was getting so ahead of myself and just so focused on certain things that it kind of was like a reality check. And I've come to realize that, health really is wealth. If I have my health, there's nothing else I should really necessarily be worried about that much, because I'm happy and I'm living my daily life, not stuck in a hospital bed. So yeah, getting back to the gym is definitely a big thing that I've really been appreciative of. And it's something that I've realized I took advantage of when I was capable of doing it, and never realized, the blessing I have to be able to wake up and go lift and do that activity each and every day, because I wasn't able to for about 7 to 8 months. So every day I'm grateful that I'm able to now. Losing a testicle wasn't necessarily something I ever thought too much about after I was diagnosed. And even when I knew I was getting that surgery, it wasn't necessarily something that was really on my mind a whole lot until after I had gotten the surgery. And now the surgery that I had for the orchiectomy, I did opt for a prosthetic one, but it's definitely not the same thing. Like you can, you know which one's not the real one. I can live like a perfectly normal life with it the rest of my life and not have to worry about anything. I felt more comfortable getting it just based off my age and everything. So I was like, I'd rather opt for it. Over some time after the surgery, like there were periods of time where I would start getting in my head about things and thinking, because I am, so young, and a lot of people who, like if you're an older man who has it, who gets diagnosed, it's that issue, the issue that I was dealing with mentally with losing a testicle isn't something that they would necessarily worry about, I guess, as much. So kind of like my identity as like, a male who's, like a young 21-year-old male, it was definitely, now I'm like good, but like there was a good period of time where I just kind of was thinking that, even like, especially going along with the gym, like I was like, my testosterone is going to be so messed up for the rest of my life. I've come to really be open about it and just accepting, because, there's really nothing you can do about it. I just like making jokes about it at this point, because there's nothing like, I don't want to just sit around and mope about it. This just makes everything way worse. So yeah, I definitely struggled with, I guess, my identity for a little bit with feeling like a man, especially um, the chemo that I had and the surgery. You're like, I don't feel the same as I used to. Like it can be hard, but you just kind of have to give everything time, and the body's resilient. So you just give it some time and it will heal, which, I've been grateful to see my body get back to normal in every aspect. There are two things that come to mind in terms of having high emotions throughout this whole thing. And that would be one, the day that I went into remission. And then second would be the day that my surgeon had called with the pathology results, and he had said that 100% of the tumors, I think there were 58 that they had taken out, all 58 were 100% dead tumors. So that was basically saying that the chemo had basically killed everything. And those 2 days were probably the most emotional for me, just because like I'm like kind of choking up thinking about it. But um especially remission, it's like you spend so much time um, battling this nasty disease, and then you finally hear, like, it was like the first bit of good news I've had in like a good 8 9 months. So it was really good to hear. And the same thing applies to the pathology results when my surgeon had called me. It was just really good to hear and like refreshing. And um, that was when, I really started getting into praying a lot and going to church and everything. Um, so it was just like my prayers have been answered, because there was a couple different things that those tumors could be mixed with, and 100% dead tumors was basically the best thing it could have been. Otherwise, I could have ended up needing more surgery or something on my lungs and stuff. So it was really a blessing to hear, to get that phone call, and then the appointment that I had with when he had told me, when my oncologist had told me that I was going into remission. That was also, a really good moment. I was, crying with my mom in the room with my oncologist. It's very rewarding to go through an entire battle like that. In terms of the entire situation, it's just all pretty negative. So when you get those moments where you see progress and you realize you're getting healthier and you're getting better, it's very, it can get emotional, but it's like happy tears. It's really good. Try to never get ahead of yourself, because it's never a good thing. There's so many things to worry about and think about, like endless things. So if you just keep going down that path, it's never going to go in your favor. Like you're just going to keep thinking negatively. So just never get ahead of yourself. It's also a really good time to realize how many people you have around you. If you ever have felt like lonely or alone before, it's a really good time to realize how many people truly do love and care about you, and realizing and being appreciative of how many people do feel that way about you and want to see you thrive and do better. It's definitely no easy feat whatsoever, but if you have hope and if you only think positively about it, I guarantee you the whole entire situation and battle gets a hell of a lot easier.